Hey, my name is Daniel Posney, and today I want to talk about the truth of you is love. And I'm in a much different place than I was about 20 years ago. And so if you would have addressed that with me 20 years ago, I would have kind of rolled my eyes. Yes, it sounds very spiritual, but life is life, and I use my mind to do the programming work and the technical work that I'm doing. So um, that all sounds good, but I couldn't grasp it. So a good friend of mine has said that she sees me as someone that works with pragmatic compassion, and I agree. I agree that I kind of come from an empathic and empathetic place, and with compassion because I have my own direct experience. I have my own traumas in my life that I'm still working out, and then there's a part of me that's has always been a little bit logical, and I love the science of things and quantum physics and so I've always blended quantum physics, metaphysics, spirituality, psychology, my own direct experience to help others to move beyond their own traumas and limiting beliefs into a more authentic self. And that to me just speaks so strongly of empowerment. And that's another thing that I feel very passionate about is my own empowerment. And it took me a little while to go beyond what my thoughts wanted to keep me in. So my natural thoughts want to keep me in fear and worry and blame and shame and regret and resentment. And that's just kind of the way that the egoic mind works. And, I've tried positive thinking techniques and things like that. And they all serve a purpose. They're all great. But until you get down, it's like you're fighting against yourself until you can get down to why is it that I have this particular belief or this particular notion about myself or about the world? Then it's just as you're butting your head up against the wall a lot. And I found that in the when I was in the right space, it worked. But if I wasn't in the right space, then it was all bullshit. Then I couldn't really grab onto it. So I had to be in the right space for me to think my way through it. But it didn't really stick because here I am. I'm trying to combat my own mind, which is the source of the problem. And I'm trying to use my mind to work on the problem. So it's like I think of it like the fox in charge of the chicken coop. It's one of these things where you're trying to use your mind to change your own mind, which can be done to a certain extent. But again, now we're back to, okay, what's the underlying belief that's kind of at the core of things that maybe through all of our affirmations and positive thinking that we're, spiritually bypassing. And I don't want to spiritually bypass. Just fix this here. So the truth of you is love. Where does that come from? Well, part of it is if we were to have a discussion and we were to take all of our thoughts and our limiting beliefs and all those things, if we were to take that to court and litigate that, it would fail miserably because you start to get into, okay, what is really true? And we're gonna dive deep right now. This idea that what is really true about you? What is the thing that is permanent with you? And so you have to kind of, let's just say that we're in a meditation and everything that you find is temporary about you, you have to put it in a balloon and let it drift away. So just walk with me here. You take your political preferences, you're Republican or a Democrat, and feel how strongly a part of you holds on to that you say this one is bad and this one is good. Now, something happened out in the world in your experience to make you believe that one was good and one was bad. And so you grabbed onto something that felt less bad to you or a little bit good to you. Like maybe they were on your side. And so you grabbed onto that and there was some hope in there that hopefully that served you. And sometimes it kind of tricked you and it said, that really didn't serve me. Is this really what I want to hold on to? So there's this anxiety and lack of peace and certainty and clarity when we hold on to things like that. So let's just say that we took our Republican, Democrat, or not a Republican, Democrat, I'm an independent, or whatever the thing is, and we put it in a balloon, let it drift away. Now, here's a really strong one. Take your religion or your religious beliefs that you did not have as a child, as a becoming being into this world. You did not have any religious beliefs. You maybe had a connection with certain ideologies because of your parents or your upbringing, or maybe because of a past life. But all those things were also kind of created through your own experience. So let's take just for a moment. You can grab it right back after we're done with this. But just for a moment, see if you can take it into the balloon and just let it drift away. Maybe you want to even put a tether on that balloon so you could get that one back. But just for now, just imagine that you had no religious beliefs. You had no political preferences. Whew. Can you feel how there's like a, am I going to be okay? I mean, that's something that I really feel strongly about. Yeah, I know. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies the, it's not about this or that. It's that there is this attachment to that. But you can feel that inside of you, even if there's a strong attachment, that there's something inside of you that says, maybe this is true. Maybe I could exist without this, but I don't want to. So that's again, that's the mind coming back in and wanting to grab onto some kind of identification. It really makes it worried. And I really have a lot of fun with this. Like I think about my own egoic mind as this little, like a creature almost, little aspect of me that I created. And it's become this little personality of itself. And it's always trying to grab onto something and hold on to something. And it takes me down these roads of reaction and monkey mind thinking and all those things. And I just wonder, like, could I exist without that? And my mind says, no, you can't. But inside, there's also something called awareness. So I would even expand and say, there's this loving awareness of all things about you, your egoic mind, your anger, your sadness, your depression, your joy, your bliss, all those things. If we didn't have this loving awareness, this presence in of ourselves, I don't know that we could actually exist. We kind of need all that together to make this personhood. But one side of it has kind of gotten out of balance. So here we are. How do we get back into that loving presence to know that we are loved? Well, one of the things that really helps me and helps a lot of people is to start to discover what is it about you that you believe? What is it about the world that you believe or that you've been taught? And start to pull those out and examine them and take them to court. Is this really true? And you start wondering, like, wow, I've been holding on to that whole idea for a long time. Would it really pass or fail some litigation in court? And most of the time, I would say, if not all the time, it's not going to pass. It's going to be dependent on your own perception of your life and your conditioning and your traumas. So if it doesn't pass that, then let's just say that we let that one go and then see where we sit. Take a deep breath and just sit back in that. So now we've let go of any political preferences, any religious ideas, any attachment to that. And then one by one, we start to pull away the beliefs. So what I'm talking about here is not like, I mean, that's a lot to do in one section, but I have 20 minutes. So this is what happens over a period of time. As you pull those off, what happens is you start coming back to the light that you are, the love that you are. So you started out as the light and the love and the presence. And then life happened, shit happened, conditioning happened. And it's like that layers of belief and conditioning layered on top of that bright light. But you're there the whole time through the whole experience of whatever it is that you experienced in your life. You're there the whole time. That's what's so satisfying to me, is that when you really take that into your heart, and again, here's the process. You start to take that into your heart and your mind goes, no, that's not true. No, God has never been with me in these conditions. Why did this happen to me? Yeah, that's the problem. That the problem isn't to answer those questions and those concerns so much. It is to ask, why is that other self, that little self there questioning? That's the big question. I'm flooded with this truth in my heart, and it feels so good. And here comes my mind. It's like that is the thing that needs to be questioned. And it's kind of like we've been walking beside it all our life and letting it speak for us. And it speaks for us, and we think that we're it. So we become like this with it and become one being with this. But spiritual awakening is partly about releasing that grip and looking at it. So then we start to, instead of just walking side by side or within us, we start, wait a minute, you right there. Yes, you. And you start to question those thoughts. And once you put your focus on it and directly look at it, then you can start seeing it for what it is. And then part of that process is going into, okay, where did that come from? Where can I have compassion for myself? Where can I have empathy for myself when that thing was created? And when you can go into and really feel that and hear that, and some of the biggest realizations in counseling and therapy work, if you had the right person there with you, that person can really listen to you with their heart, and not just listen so they can label or listen so they can prescribe. It's listening to their own self from what you're saying. So when they really listen to what you're saying, they can see it in themselves. And by seeing it in themselves, you can say, I have had direct experience of some of that. I felt unworthy. I felt like I couldn't forgive this person. I felt anger and rage. I felt like killing somebody. And when you have that compassion and that empathy, now you realize the connection with the person. And then that counselor hopefully will realize that it may be that that person is actually there for them. That's when you've got a really deep connection, that you've got some real compassion and empathy. And that connection between that person and you, or the counselor or the therapist, is love. That's what that is. When you can connect in that, there's nothing in the way of that. There's no judgment that puts up a gate in front of that. That is what love is, or that's partly what love is. So when you start to ask yourself about this question, or this idea, the truth of you is love. It's a process of pulling back the layers of the untruths that have been layered on top of you, the presence. And it doesn't mean that you're going to become anything, or that you need to cure cancer or become the president or anything like that. It's just that you get to be authentic again, that you, or maybe for the first time. And it's such a good feeling that it's like, here's the process again. It feels really good. Yes, Daniel. Yes, that feels real good. And then, of course, the mind's going to try and come in again. But that is part of the juice. That is part of the realization that, yes, I am loved, because look how powerful this is, that this feels to me. And yet my mind wants to come in and sabotage that. That must be pretty freaking powerful. When you really look at it from this different perspective, instead of just listening to the mind and paying attention to all of what it says, look at the dynamics of what's happening. Something feels really good to you, and there's something that wants to hold you back. You can start to tap into the thing that really feels good to you, because, to be honest, I can't really trust my own mind. My mind is not really interested in truth. My heart, my presence, my loving consciousness, that's the thing that feels into and is attracted to truth. My mind will try and deviate from that and go into something that isn't truth, but that serves that identity, that the patterns and the mind programs and the limiting beliefs on rules. Whatever attracts into that, it will attract that. But this presence that I carry and that you carry, that maybe covered up in some way, that is the most powerful thing. It's like the greatest promise that's ever been made. No matter what happens to you, you will always have love. You will always be loving awareness. You will always have presence. And all those things are just temporary covers to that presence. And when those things start to be really looked at and let go of one by one, or, God forbid, all at one time, but, losing those one at a time, you start to open, you start to be able to breathe a little bit deeper. You stand a little taller. You speak with a little bit more, dare I say, authority, a little bit more loving authority. This is place that says, yep, I've been through that, and I know what's happening. Taking in that phrase, the truth of you is love, and taking that into your heart, and notice how your heart really expands to it. It really feels into it and says, yeah, this feels good. And then what happens usually is that this thought comes in, I want to believe this, but, and that's the process of the mind. It's just its natural way. It's in reaction mode. It wants to question these things. Anything that kind of leads out of attachment and identity, it wants to kind of pull that back in. But that's your signal. It's kind kind of like, that's not the problem, it's actually the solution. So the solution is to notice that and say, wow, look what just happened. We tend to look at our beliefs and everything and say, we need to stop thinking that way. We need to stop those beliefs. But I feel like, for me, I want to really look at those head on. I want to look at them straight away and say, okay, let's listen to that. Where does that come from? And it usually comes from either a traumatic experience or a perceived traumatic experience. And what Dr. Gabor Mate says is it's not actually the experience, it's what happens inside of us in reaction to the experience, or something close to that. So that to me tells me that, my mind is always kind of on edge, looking for something to attach an identity to. It's usually something related to fear, worry, blame, shame, regret, and resentment. And all that, there's something inside of me that says, yes, the truth of me is love. My mind wants to pull that away from me, but I am the awareness. So no matter what my mind comes up with, this is the cool part, no matter what my mind comes up with, there's always awareness of that the mind comes up with. Therein lies the solution. No matter what my pain, my suffering, my trauma, my anger, my rage, my thoughts of murder, there's always awareness in that. And that's, if we can point to that, that's actually the truth of what you are. And the truth of what you are is this loving awareness or love. So the process is to pull away those things that, or at least give less energy to those things that want to pull you away from that truth that you know in your heart is true. So I believe that nothing is actually going to destroy you. You're an infinite, eternal being of light and love. There's the experience of these things happening to you. But at the end of the day, at the end of the life, there is only this presence of love. So the exercise that I was doing before, hopefully we got a lot of it there. I was taking away all those things that we identify with, and we put them in a little balloon, just let them float off. And if something really strong, like your religious preference and that kind of thing, if that's a hard thing to let go of, just put a little tether on there. You can pull it back when we're done. But just as an experiment, see if you can let that go in a balloon, just to see how it feels. Because I guarantee you, when you start to do an exercise similar to this, you will feel this closer to God presence. So pull apart all those preferences one by one, just this little exercise. Come back to it if you wish. Your political preference, your religious preference, your sexual preference, your nationality, all those things that kind of build you up into a person that has this identity. Because I promise you, you're going to have to let it go at some point. It's called death. But wouldn't it be great to practice this so that your transition is as smooth as possible? That's how I feel about it. So all those things that you have preferences for, food preference, I'm a vegan, or I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a meat eater, or I'm a whatever. See if you can pull those off. And what you have left is probably just a body with no preference. Now remove the body and see what you have left. After removing the body, you are only presence. You're only loving awareness, just existing. And it reminds me of a book that I once read. It was like a Masonic Freemason story. And the story was, it was kind of like, I don't know if this is true, but it's a pretty true sounding book, but it was a very fantastical story. And the story was about this guy who was becoming a Mason, and he went on this journey. He went into the middle of the earth, and then he has this experience where he's at the very, very center of the earth, and there's this presence there, and there's he finds himself in the void. Like he steps off and he kind of drifts into the void, and because he's full of thoughts, he starts bouncing off of walls and starts to go in all these different directions. And he's trying to center himself. He's spinning and spinning. Finally, he gets some presence about him, starts to calm his thoughts, and he starts to slow down. And he starts to slow down more. Now he starts just drifting, and then he gets to a place where he has no thoughts, and he's completely still. And then he kind of panics, and he's in this center point, and he can't move, no matter. There's nothing to push up against. There's no energy in the field that he's in, so he can't go left or right. He can't go does is he has a thought, and then the thought pushes him in this one direction, and then he has another thought, and it takes him in another direction. And that whole thing it's just such a great metaphor for what we're doing. We exist in this void of just pure awareness, and then we have a thought, and we start to move in a direction or actually attract things to us. So it's like, I guess I would look at that scene, and instead of him moving forward or backwards in the thing, actually the middle of the walls of the earth would actually be attracted to him. That's a pretty cool idea. So I make sure that I'm covering this in so many different ways that I can go from scientific way to practical way to spiritual way. Feel into that idea. The truth of you is love. Feel into it. That's your signal. That's how you feel about it. Don't follow thoughts, because your thoughts say, "How can I even grab it?" It's like it's what an African shaman might say: that which the brain cannot eat. It cannot grab onto that. And what do you mean the truth of me is love? The truth of me is my physical body and my atoms and my cells and my blood and all that stuff. No, that's the truth of your physical body, and even that is questionable, because that's 99.999% empty space. So then we can't really grab onto that one. So what is left? If you pull away anything that's temporary and leave what's only permanent, you're left with love, or loving awareness, or presence, or consciousness. And that feels pretty good. That feels pretty expansive. And that's the thing that really helps me to live and be okay with death at the same time. Just causes me to kind of breathe a little bit more, have a little bit more space around my thoughts. And when I do drift into reaction and triggers and thoughts and all those things, that it's much easier and quicker and smoother to come back to presence. So it's not like I stop continuing to have any triggers or any upsets, but they sure are few and far between, and they don't affect me like they used to. And that loving presence really is the captain now, instead of my mind, who was the captain before. Now the loving presence holds that. And I want to share with you the truth about me and the work that I do is that, part of the work that I do is what I said about all the research that I do and that kind of thing. And so I come in with some research that will help. But really the most effective thing, and I've heard other people say this, the most effective thing that I have is my own heart. That when I can listen with my heart, and I could acknowledge what's happening with this person, and I acknowledge what's happening in my own self, now I can connect with that person. And when I make that connection, consciousness streams in. Spirit streams in a higher way. And words are said, or things are done, or actions are taken. But it all comes from that connection. And I just wonder, is that what's really happening? Is that all the healing that's happening? Maybe so, that we both take ourselves to the reality that healing is there, or the reality that the sickness or the old traumas aren't there or aren't so prevalent anymore. So think of it as you're moving yourself into a reality where you know and feel and acknowledge and embody that you are love. What would that feel like? And that to me is one of the most profound exercises, just to allow myself to be in that presence. Yep, my ego will come in and say, don't be so egoic. Or my mind will come in and say, that's not very practical. That's okay. That's the way my mind works. But I'm not going to give it the energy and the satisfaction of engaging in a conversation with it. I stand in my awareness. I stand in my presence. I stand in the love that I am. And egoically, that doesn't make me anything. It actually tells the truth of what I am. So just something to get used to and acknowledge again. That's what you always are. That's what you always will be. You will never be anything more or less than I am. But in that I am is everything and nothing at the same time. All right, ponder that, meditate on that. Don't think about it. I love you, thank you, and bless you. See you next time.